Hey, what's going on, everyone? This is Alex with MaxExposure, the National Association of Local Businesses, coming to you with another video. Today, we're going to hit on sales prospecting tips. We did a sales prospecting video last week. We talked about Trello and how awesome of an app that is to really shore up your sales process. I'm going to touch on that just briefly again, but I want to go more in depth on some other topics I think would be very helpful and just some common pitfalls that I see some people make so that you don't make the same mistakes. So let's get into it. The first thing I want to talk about is not relying on one or two methods of prospecting. And what I mean by that is too often people just find what they're comfortable with and then stick with that. But the reality is there are so many different ways to contact prospects nowadays, and they're being inundated, quite frankly, with different emails and phone calls and messages. You need to also set yourself apart and show that you can be persistent in a variety of ways. Okay, don't be annoying. Persistence and annoying are two very different things, right? Maybe we'll talk about that a little later, but don't rely on one method of prospecting. Don't be the person that just does networking events. Because guess what? After a little bit, you're going to start to see the same businesses over and over and over again, and you're not filling your pipeline like you should be. Same with email. If you're the type of person that likes to sit behind a computer and just send emails, guess what? Prospects are getting dozens of emails every single day. So what sets you apart from the dozens of other companies that they're getting emails from every single day? Okay, you need to be also persistent on that front, and quite frankly probably have to send thousands of emails a month if that's your only form of prospecting, and that takes a lot of time and just isn't as effective. So make sure you're showing your, sort of, especially if you do business within a local community, make sure you're showing yourself in that community in a variety of ways. Make sure that prospects can see you're real, you're serious about your business. So that's where I like to use, I'm going to bring this up again, Trello. It's a great way to have a set process and to follow that process so you can create whatever process you want. This is just a sample, and this isn't even necessarily what I would do per se. I just created this very quickly, but something like a cold call attempt to first try and get in touch with the decision maker, then a very short and brief email, another cold call attempt, a LinkedIn connection, sending a case study or supporting document for why you can help them with their specific problem, Facebook message, and then maybe a breakup email if you haven't been able to get in touch with the decision maker at that point. You can also add, again, walking into businesses, networking events. Okay, so you can add all of those things in, but make sure you're following that process and make sure you're trying to be very tenacious in your prospecting. Okay, and that's what makes the difference and would set you apart from actually getting that meeting as opposed to another salesperson. So the other thing is, and this is something that I'm sure you can all relate to, but when you receive an email, when you send an email, be very brief and be very clear, right? I was going to say you receive emails all the time, and the people who are sending paragraph after paragraph after paragraph, trying to sell you on their product or service, people do not read that. And there are plenty of studies out there. You can Google all the different studies out there, but they essentially show that the average time someone reads an email, that's the average time someone spends reading an email, is about 15 to 20 seconds. So keep that in mind. That's only a few sentences. So only send emails that are very brief. 4 sentences, I would say, max, if you can get your point across. And don't try and sell your product or service through an email. Your goal is to get an appointment, usually, for most people out there, and to actually get them either face to face or on the phone or through Zoom, right? That's obviously very huge right now. Whatever your sales process is, don't use email to try and sell a product or service. Just try and get their attention, identify a problem, and then make them feel confident that you at least have something that could potentially solve that problem. So that's kind of the goal with that. So I'll emphasize that again. Be very brief when you send emails. Don't go on and on and on. Same with voicemails. Okay. The other thing is to be persistent. There's also all sorts of studies out there. Again, you can Google these for yourself. But usually most people have come to the conclusion that it takes about 8+ touches on average to even get a first appointment. Now, what is a touch to begin with? A touch is something that you know they either saw or heard. So they either read something or they actually heard something, from your business, from you, not a social media message. Because you have no idea if they actually read your Facebook message or your LinkedIn message, right? You can at least see email open rates and things like that. And by the way, an email open rate, I'm going to go back to this very quickly, the need to send a very brief email. Just because someone opens an email doesn't tell the whole story. You can have a great open rate. That just means your subject lines are good. People have to open emails in order to delete them. So keep that into account. If they open your email because your subject line intrigues them, and then they see all these paragraphs that they have to read, guess what they're most likely doing? Hitting the delete button. So it doesn't necessarily mean just because you have a high open rate that people are actually reading your emails. So your best bet is to, again, follow the studies and keep your emails very brief, but maybe keep the same subject lines that are doing so well, right? So even if they're deleting an email, though, however, I would consider that a touch because it at least means they saw something regarding you or your business. Same with the voicemail. A touch wouldn't be calling them up and not leaving a voicemail or not leaving a message, okay? Obviously, then I wouldn't consider that a touch. So just keep that in mind. The other thing is try different approaches in messaging. We have all of these tools at our disposal in terms of email tracking, right? You know when someone's opening emails for the most part. Almost every salespeople nowadays has that ability. So if you see people opening your emails, but they're not responding to you, guess what that would be an indication of? You need to try a different approach. Don't just keep trying to sell your product or service, or don't just keep going for an appointment if you've been trying that and not been successful. So what I mean by that is, let's say I'm calling up and let's say I'm emailing and I'm trying to set an appointment, and I've sent 2 or 3 emails basically saying the same thing, how great my product and service is and how I'd love to get 15 minutes with them, right? I'm sure you've heard that pitch before, because every other salespeople uses it. So I'm emailing them how great my product and service is and asking for 15 minutes of their time. And I've seen that they opened my emails, every single email I've sent. So I've sent 2 or 3, they've opened all of them, but I get no response. Does that mean that I would keep sending those types of emails or calling and saying the same thing, leaving a message, hey, let me tell you about my product and service real quick and let me just get 15 minutes of your time? No. That would be an indication that I need to change things up. And maybe instead of trying to go for an appointment right off the bat, I'm going to build credibility, which means I'm going to send them a case study. I'm going to send them something that would actually help their business for free and build credibility and make myself stand out from other people. So I might send them a tutorial on how to do something. I might send them an infographic. I might send them a short video. I might send them whatever it is that is actually going to help them and make them see me as an expert in my field. Now they're more likely to respond and reciprocate down the road when I do ask for an appointment. So I might do that a couple times and send them some little free stuff along the way, something that's going to help their business and make an actual impact before I ask for an appointment. So try different approaches. That's all I would say. The other thing is, don't be afraid to push away. This is also something I see a lot of people making a mistake of, not knowing when to call it quits. Have an actual timetable. For me, I would say from the day I get a new prospect in, I'm going to spend the month qualifying my prospect. Meaning if by the end of the month, 30 days, I either can't get in touch with the decision maker or I realize that they don't have an actual problem, they're out. I'm putting them to the side and maybe I'll try them again in a few months, but for all intents and purposes, they're out. People are afraid, I guess, a lot of salespeople to say when, and they have their pipeline filled with 300, 400 prospects. But you know what that does? that means that you don't have the actual time to dedicate to the people who do need your product and services, because there is no way with 300 or 400 people in your pipeline that you can call on all of those people on a regular basis to try and set an appointment or get in touch with them. There's just no way. So that means that prospects are falling by the wayside, and the important ones who might need your product or service or do have that problem, you're probably not paying attention to them like you should be, and nurturing them and getting those 8+ touches into the ones that actually matter, that have a high chance of becoming a client. You're not dedicating enough time to them. So make sure you have a set date that if you can't qualify this prospect by this time, put them to the wayside for now, and make sure that you're filling your pipeline with people who actually matter. Breakup emails are great. If you don't know what a breakup email is, it's basically saying just that now might not be a great time. It doesn't seem like they're interested in talking, and maybe down the road we'll revisit. And it's simply telling them that, hey, no hard feelings. Doesn't seem like it's the right time for you. I've tried to reach out in this entire month. You haven't gotten back to me. Now just might not be the right time. No hard feelings. How would you like me to proceed? There are all sorts of, just Google breakup email. There are all sorts of them. And now I was just kind of throwing, if I go breakup email, you'll see here, just go to the HubSpot one. They're obviously great. And you got 7 of them right here that get high open rates and high response rates. And you, again, notice that they're all very short. Go with that, okay? So that's what I would say when it comes to your breakup email. Don't be afraid of it, because I've used it in the past, and it's actually one of the better performing emails. And you'd actually be surprised how many people actually do get back in touch with you from that breakup email. And finally, I want to talk about the goal. The goal should be to find out if a prospect has a problem, not to sell your product or service. I'm going to briefly touch on something I heard on a Sandler podcast, so I'm not taking credit for this by any means. This was on a Sandler podcast, and they talked about the prospecting process and how it's very much like a gumball machine. And I just like that analogy because you can really visualize that old school gumball machine in front of the supermarket, right? The big round globe and all the different color gumballs in there. And they talked about prospecting essentially being like putting in the quarter, right? And turning the knob, and a certain color gumball comes out. And you have no control over what color gumball does come out, but you always have a favorite. Everyone had a favorite. So if your favorite is blue, you put the quarter in, you turn the knob, maybe a pink one comes out. You put another quarter in, you turn the knob, maybe a yellow one comes out. And that's very much like prospecting. You have no idea, you have no control over whether someone actually has a problem or not. You're essentially putting the quarter in, which is your prospecting. So you're walking into a business, you're cold calling them, you're emailing them, you're putting the quarter in, you're giving it a try, and you're hoping that a blue one comes out. And a blue one will come out eventually, but don't waste your time on pink ones, yellow ones, red ones, green ones, because those people, to bring it back to prospecting, those people don't have problems. And if they don't have a problem, they're not going to buy your product or service. So don't waste time trying to convince someone they have a problem. Go after the people that realize they have a problem and they need your product or service. So just again, going back to the importance of having a good pipeline. Don't waste your time on prospects that have no problem, no issues in their business. Even if you're a B2C company, don't go after consumers that don't actually have a problem, right? Go after the ones that have a need for your service, because there are plenty of them out there, but what's happening is you're spending too much time trying to convince someone why they need your product or service who's never really a candidate in the first place, and it's taking away from you discovering the people out there that do have a need. So I hope that was helpful for you. A little long video, but I think we touched on some really important subjects. So if you have any comments, questions, feel free to leave them below. Try that breakup email Make sure you have a tight sales process. Keep your voicemails, your emails very, very short and brief, and don't be afraid to push away. And remember, it takes 8+ touches to get a first appointment. So be tenacious in your prospecting. All right. So reach out to us if you have any questions, and we'll see you on the other side. See you later.